Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. And I'm back from a long absence. I took the summer off to attempt to get a few things straight. And in the meantime, I was able to spend a little bit of time in New Orleans, which was a pretty good experience for me. I enjoyed my visit there, a lot of different types of food and music and culture. If you get a chance, check out the cathedral there in New Orleans. It's one of the few places that I've been to in a while that I just felt the presence of something more, something beyond. It was a very peaceful and quiet place. It was in that meantime of having taken some time off that I was able to think of a few things, or think about a few things. And this is kind of what the result of all that thought is, this video topic for today, which is, the mind, body, spirit dichotomy or trichotomy. And I remember when I was younger, growing up and kind of hearing people talk about this as kind of a stool. You take away any one leg of the stool and the stool no longer stands. Several thousand years ago, a man by the name of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, figured something out. Perhaps he was not the first to realize it. Perhaps he was simply the first to voice it. Or perhaps it was a long lost truth that he rediscovered. Desire causes suffering. This is something most people can agree with. Desire for wealth, desire for companionship, and desire for the material and opulent. Desire itself is not altogether wrong, but it is the desire for a better life that pulls many out of poverty. It's the desire to enjoy life and enjoy it longer and more fully that motivates many to change the course of their health. This makes me think of yet another one of Buddha's ideas, the middle path. Before MGTOW, many of us were on a search for the right job, a search for a job that would adequately impress women, a search for physical well-being in order that our physical pursuits might then attract women. We thought that if we just had companionship or a relationship, that this would be the capstone to our achievements. Yet things never quite came together. Things never materialized how we had envisioned. So if desire, or rather more specifically desire of the wrong things, causes us to suffer, what then can we do to bring contentment? In life, money is often not the end-all be-all. Material possessions lose their sheen. The body grows old and diseased despite our best efforts. Life is often about choices, and the way that life plays out is mostly affected by our individual choices. If we can be convinced to accumulate as much as possible, to continue in the chase for things, then contentment will elude us. If we search for peace in the form of another, we will not find it. This is the power of the decision to go your own way. There is no requirement to seek the material. There is no fruitless fight to find the one, only to be ultimately disappointed. This is why so many women suffer from anxiety issues. They are in the constant state of desiring more without the will to pursue it. They are never satiated, and the idea to go their own way escapes them. By contrast, many of us have gone our own way in theory rather than reality. Many of us have abandoned the idea of relationships, and indeed relationships themselves. Yet we are still working jobs that we hate and living lives that we do not recognize as our own. The days are too few and life too short to simply exist rather than live. Obviously, most of us cannot afford to simply walk away or walk out on our jobs and obligations, but this is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that many of us refuse to put up with the stress and marginalization brought on by marriage and relationships, only to accept it with open arms from our employer. I'm not saying that suffering, fear, and anxiety will never be a part of life, but I am saying that we should not accept it as the norm or be ruled by it. Take a moment to reflect and to think. Ask yourself a few honest questions. Are you going your own way? Is life better? Or have you simply entered one current from another? And that's the question I think that was brought up to me when I had time to think and reflect and really look at some of these issues. And I think that that's what a lot of us have done. We have traded the shackles of marriage and relationships only to retain shackles of another sort. And so I had to really take a step back and kind of look at things. For example, a part of this whole stool or tripod, if you will, the whole body aspect, I think that this is something that cannot be stressed enough. If you've ever dealt with any kind of physical issues, be it a disease or disability or chronic pain or whatever the case may be, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's frustrating, it is kind of true. It is kind of true that youth is wasted on the young. So I remember being a kid, in the backyard, running around, going to grandma's house and going on hikes and things in the woods and just doing all sorts of things that I really enjoyed doing. And as time has gone on, as I've gotten older, joints have gotten more achy and sore and so on and so forth. It is a lot harder once you get out of shape. It's a lot harder once you get out of that mindset of preserving and protecting your body, so to speak. And you've gotten out of that eating right and exercising type mentality to get back into it. And it may not affect you for the first year, or the first 5 years, or even the first 10 years, but eventually this stuff has a way of catching up with people, and they start to develop, problems due to weight gain and other things. And what does getting your physical body out of whack typically brings about other issues, because you get to a point where you're out of a routine of doing those things. Work begins to take up most of your life, and just a simple act of moving about is tedious and painful and becomes a chore. And so then you start to have the thoughts of, well, I need to lose weight. I need to get back in shape, But what I'm getting at is once one of these things gets out of whack, be it the mind, be it the body, be it the spirit. I look at the mind as, I guess, if your mind is in a good place, struggles with the mind, depression, anxiety, and those sort of things, as opposed to, your mind being centered and your mind being in a peaceful and contented place, your mind being focused, your mind being, clear and able to think logically and rationally, your body being healthy because you eat the right foods, you exercise, you take care of yourself, you don't abuse drugs, you don't abuse alcohol, you don't abuse tobacco. Not that these things, again, we mentioned Buddha's middle path. These things, alcohol, tobacco, certain types of foods and things, of course, you don't want to overindulge in any one thing. If you drink too much water, you can be susceptible to water toxicity, but you have to drink a lot of water. The point I'm getting at is anything out of balance can cause harm and distress. The other aspect of spirit. Now, this can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, and this being MGTOW, men going our own way, it's going to mean something different to you than maybe it means to me. Maybe for you, it's not a religion. Maybe for you, it's not related to the Bible or the Torah or the Quran or one of these books, and it may not be related to anything to do with Buddhism. It may not be anything related to even MGTOW philosophy. Perhaps you're agnostic, or perhaps you're an atheist. But the point I'm getting at is the spirit can mean many different things depending on who you're asking, who you're talking to. You have to decide for yourself what that looks like in your life. But there's a connection to it. For some people, they eat right, they hit the gym, that's how they maintain their body, their mind. They read books, books that challenge them to think, books that introduce new ideas to them. Perhaps they take up a hobby, a musical instrument, or archery, or something that really occupies the mind and requires that there be focus with the mind and body. And then that spiritual aspect, which could be something as simple as a walk in the park, or a walk out in the woods, or a kayak out on the lake or into the ocean. These are all things that I think, jobs and everything else aside, that's the other aspect, is if you're not happy with the place you're at, if things are not working out the way that you had hoped and envisioned, then it might be time to take a risk. It might be time to leave that job or position, or start a completely new career field. Because that's a lot of what causes this stuff to be so out of whack. The crazy 70, 80-hour work weeks, the stress, anxiety, the constant pressure to produce more and more and more, to give 100% and then be asked to give beyond that. This is what causes people to eat badly, abuse alcohol. When they do get their days off, they're so tired that they can't really engage in anything outside of the home. And then that starts to bring a dark cloud upon their mind and starts to make them feel trapped. You start to see weight gain. You start to see health issues. You move away from those things which give you meaning in life. And then your mind becomes a darkened place. And every so often we have to set ourselves aside, sit down, think, be introspective, and figure out where we're at in life. Are we moving ahead? Are we progressing? And I don't just mean in a work sense, or in a material accumulation sense, or in a monetary value based on the amount of money I'm earning an hour sense. I mean, in a true, real sense. Are you becoming the best version of you? Are you becoming the best you can be? When you look in the mirror, do you like the person that you see? Do you see that you're progressing and reaching, the potential that you could reach? Or are you stagnant? Are you running water, or are you a pond? And I think a lot of people think about this kind of stuff, but we don't think it's important. It's not important until it starts affecting maybe the other two legs of the stool. Maybe we can deal with one of the legs of the stool creaking and kind of weakening, but when a second one's involved, or when all three are involved, that's kind of when it seems to be an issue that then people want to address and start to do something about. But it all starts in one of the three places. You have to ask yourself, what leg of the stool needs the WD-40? As they say, the greasy, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so I encourage you guys to take some time and to think to yourselves and introspect on this past year. I mean, here we are. We're already hitting fall, September. And, in a little less than 4 months, this month and 3 more, we'll be into a new year. And it'll be another year to kind of look at things and think, did I accomplish my goals? Did I do what I intended to do? Am I better off? Am I a better person? Am I reaching my potential? Am I doing what I set out to do once I was freed from these chains? Go your own way or don't. The choice is yours.